Okay, so I left off here talking about Africa. Well, if there was ever a place in the world that was a great symbol of the force of imperialism, the continent of Africa was absolutely um, that place. All right, and we'll see that Africa, with many different countries here, uh, becomes absolutely dominated here by European influence, beginning sort of in the late 1800s and leading up to World War One. And there was a lot of motivation as to why European countries wanted to go to Africa. Some of it they kind of argued that, well, it would be good for those African people to become more like us. Well, that of course, it was cultural genocide, as we generally tend to refer to it nowadays, right? Many African nations suffered immensely under European rule. And part of the reason why there's such conflict in Africa to the present day has a lot to do with this European influence. But that's a matter for another course. All right, so Africa, we'll see here this mad scramble. You can see that these were some of the European players that were involved in trying to, pull Africa to within their empire. And this is a great image here where we get a sense just of how much of Africa was controlled by Europe. So this was a part of this age of imperialism. Almost roughly 90% of Africa was under European control by 1914, and that's the year that the war is going to start. And you see here, huge chunks like this is French influence in Northwest Africa, and would explain quite a bit why French as a language is spoken in good parts of Africa, particularly in the north. We can see the influence here again of England. And England, of course, because of the strength of the empire, has got some of the select pieces, some of the more valuable parts of Africa. So Egypt here, South Africa, most recently, in fact, prior to the war. In fact, they had to go to war over this here. So one of the major wars that preceded World War One was called the South African War, the Boer War. And that was largely precipitated by the discovery of gold and diamonds in this part of Africa. So naturally, England, being a big player, wanted its slice of that. And you can see like very few sections here in white of Africa somehow remained independent from European influence. This one here, we'll talk about the largest piece here, Abyssinia. We'll see that they maintained their independence by going to war with Italy, who had attempted to take them over. And that's something that will become relevant when we get talking about World War II. All right, but you get a sense here, right, of just how much of Africa here had been colonized. So it's the great symbol here of this imperialism. But keep in mind that, Canada was a part of that British Empire, South Africa, as we talked about, Australia, New Zealand, India. These were all parts of the British Empire. So, it is a massive entity at this time. Now, the one thing that's worth mentioning is this. What about Germany? Well, it's important to note that of all the countries in Europe leading up to the war, nobody wanted an empire more than that of Germany. But Germany, we'll see, has really one of the smaller empires, although it is a growing force. It is a major player by World War I, and it is a country that's actually sort of newly united. It's recently come together, and it did so actually by going to war with France, the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. It was the first time that the two major states of Germany, Bavaria and Prussia, worked together to go to war, and they took on France. And it was a very unlikely outcome that they defeated France, who was a big European player. And that was sort of the awakening of Germany, that holy smokes, if we become a united country, we can actually, we've got considerable influence here. And that awakening is happening by the current leader of Germany, and his name is Kaiser Wilhelm II, and we'll talk about him. And he very much believes that Germany it just hasn't found its rightful place in the sun. So he is very much looking to try to expand that German empire, and that we'll see is going to contribute certainly to this war.